First story. Author name: Bo Fly. Story title: All the people from my wrestling class disappeared. This happened back when I was in high school, but I just can't stop thinking about it. When I was in high school, I used to take wrestling classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Would start at 6 p.m. and end at 8 p.m. Even though it started at 6, I would always be there by 5:30. A few more people would come and we would just chill in the park nearby. So, one day I went to my wrestling class by 5:30. It was kind of weird because I was the only one there. I just sat alone and waited for all the other people to show up. By 6 p.m., I was still the only person, but I decided to go inside and start the class. Yet, when I entered, there was absolutely nobody. It was really weird. All the lights were on, but there was nobody inside. I went outside and decided that I would wait a little bit longer. At around 6:40, I got a call from my older sister saying that I should come back home. Also, she said, "There's someone following you. Don't take the way back by the kindergarten. Come near the supermarket and walk home from there." And then she hung up. There was actually someone standing there and staring at me. I started walking back home, and the guy started following me. As my sister said, I went near the supermarket and then walked home. By the time I was near the supermarket, the guy went back and stopped following me. I rang the doorbell, and my older sister, the one who called me, opened the door with shock on her face and said, "Why you came so early? I thought you had the wrestling class." When I said that I came home because she called me, she said she never called me. I took my phone to show her the call history, but she was right. There was no call from her. I didn't think about it too much. I thought it was an error with the phone, and my sister was just joking with me. 2 days later, I went to the next wrestling class. This time, everything was normal. By 5:30, everyone was there. I asked the guys why nobody came last time, and they all said that everyone was there. I was the only person who missed the class. I couldn't believe it. So before the class started, I went to my wrestling teacher and asked him the same question. He said that everyone was there by 6 p.m., and I wasn't. He said he tried to call me, but he wasn't able to reach me. He wanted to call my parents, but he didn't have their number. I still can't understand what happened that day. What did really happen that day? Personal thoughts. That would be hard to explain. It's almost like he had an evening that was a vision, but it really was happening. Almost like in a separate dimension or something. I don't think it's a transported universe situation, because everything else seems normal after this. The one thing that caught my attention is his teacher tried to call him. I wonder if his phone registered any kind of incoming call during that period. If not, then maybe he really wasn't in a location, and he just couldn't receive calls. He would have known if his phone was just dead, but it wasn't, because when he checked it after his sister told him that she didn't call him, it was working. So he had battery. He must just not have been connected to any network. So then the call wouldn't show up either from his teacher. But that really does seem to indicate that he just wasn't in the physical location that he should have been. It actually gives me vibes from alien abductions. I don't know why there's no classic signs, besides the missing time angle. Maybe his mind invented this to suppress that happening. Our mind does do that often, actually. If there's a traumatic event, then our mind suppresses it and protects us from its own processing of that event. If I had to take a guess, that would be my angle. Second story. Author name: RJR37. Story title: Not sure where to start. I posted this in another subreddit, and someone suggested to post it here. I'm a bit unsure about sharing my full experience here, as 1, it's pretty long, and 2, It might not even be the right subreddit. Something happened to me when I was 16. I was on a car journey with my mom. She was driving me up to the country from her house in Surrey, UK, to my dad's house in Durham. It was weird. Here are some highlights. Number 1, we lost time, or managed to drive somehow at 250 miles per hour. Not sure which is worse. 2. Phone records of calls we had made during the journey existed on our phones, but not the phones of the people we had called. 3. Day and night were all messed up. We stopped at a petrol station in the dark and bought drinks, but we both distinctly remember it being daylight when we drank them in the car. They were the only drinks we had on the trip. 4. I spoke to my mom in a voice that wasn't mine, but while we both vividly remember it happening, neither of us can remember what was said. 5. My mom said the car didn't feel right, like it wasn't in contact with the road, almost like it was sliding from side to side on oil. It's a newish car, regularly serviced and well taken care of. 6. We saw weird flashes in the sky the whole journey, like sheet lightning, but there were no storms. It was always the same position, direction, and distance from the car all the way through the 5-hour-ish journey, which was even weirder. 7. For most of the journey, we both felt fine, even though we were aware that things weren't right. We were okay with it. But when we turned up about 30 minutes on the other side of the home, after my mom somehow managed to get lost on a route she had driven dozens of times, possible but unlikely, we both felt absolutely terrified and felt like we were being watched. Literally, like if we turned around, there would be someone right outside the back window. I've never felt like that, and it stayed with us all the way until we pulled up on the driveway. I opened the car door to bolt into the house, and my mom screamed at me not to leave her alone in that car. That was so out of character for her. She's always been the strong one, but that just shows how scared she was too. There was a lot more to it, and I can write about it in more detail if people are interested, or if it would help. But I just wondered if anyone had experienced any of these things, or if anyone has any idea what sort of paranormal experience this could have been. Personal thoughts. This is a doozy. Quite a lot happening here. The first one being that they drove so fast, or that they just lost time. A lot of this is striking me as an alien abduction story, mainly because losing time is almost always associated. It's weird, there's different theories. Okay, are they here to observe? Are they here to study us? If they've been here for a while, you'd think they'd got enough data by now. But who knows? We are very different individuals, so maybe they just want to keep studying us. But they don't want us to know, so they erase our memories, or fragment them. The advice I always hear given is to try hypnosis. It can be useful if done voluntarily, and fully accepting of the suggestions, to unlock repressed memories. Sometimes it's not even aliens doing it. Anytime there's some traumatic event, our brains can actually mask what happened to protect ourselves. Similar to, small spoiler for Supernatural if you haven't watched it. Don't listen. In Supernatural, Sam was tortured in hell, in the cage, from Lucifer himself. Of course, it was a year in real time, but it was probably 100 years or something in the cage. Can you imagine being tortured that long? I can't, especially by the devil himself. Anyways, it was so traumatic that death had to construct a barrier in the mind of Sam, so that he wouldn't go completely insane. Well, it's a similar concept, although we construct our own barriers to protect our minds. Also, the fact that the calls they made showed up on their phones, but didn't connect to anyone else, that also strikes me as being in a ship where you could make a call, but it wasn't able to connect out. The signal just wasn't strong enough, or they were too far away. Even the day and night cycle seems strange. Like, you go in, you buy food, and then you're in your car and it's already daylight. If I have to lend my money to anything, this was an alien abduction. Even the sense of being watched, well, perhaps they really were. And flashes in the sky, yeah, some kind of alien abduction. I'm almost certain that's what it was. I'm just glad they're okay. Third story. Author name, Cat22L. Story title, I'm still crapping my pants over this. About 30 seconds ago, I was sitting on the couch as my dog walked by to go sit on our bed we have behind the L part of the sectional. She had something small caught in her throat last night. I think it was a popcorn shell, so I was paying attention to her breathing just to make sure she got it out. For a few minutes, she was breathing fine. And then what sounded like a snore started happening. This is semi-normal for her, depending on what position she's laying in, so I didn't bother to go over and check on her. That went on for about 5 minutes, until the most disgusting, and to my now realization, terrifying, snore, cough, wheeze sound started happening. I go over to her to make sure she's okay, and the exact moment I looked at her bed, the sound stopped mid-breath, and she wasn't there. She was outside with my parents, had been for around 30 minutes. There's no way to get out of the room without walking right past me. I don't know whose dog I saw, and what was making that creepy sound 5 feet away from me, but I'm going to be staying outside for the rest of the day and hiring an exorcist. Edit. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to comment, although I don't think I'll be able to sleep again for the same reason. Personal thoughts. I wonder, can dogs, if they die, leave an imprint, perhaps like humans can, and appear as ghosts? You would think so. In my mind, the qualifying trait would be a level of sentience. Whatever it is we categorize as consciousness, being able to have a subjective experience of the world, unique to oneself. And to be honest, we don't know exactly what causes that. Is it simply a phenomena of then the sum being greater than the parts? Such complexity in our brains that they produce a sentient effect, however that happens. Personally, I think it's more than that. You can think of it like this. If you made an exact copy of yourself right now, down to every atomic position, including the brain and the energy states, if you could do this right at this moment, would you then be self-aware in both bodies? I don't think you would. I think there's some qualifying trait within each of us that makes us unique. Something we can't quite measure yet. I don't think it's magic. I think it's just something we don't yet understand. Regardless, on this tangent, it's just slightly related because perhaps he was seeing a ghost of a past dog. Or maybe it's just a future event that he was seeing play out early. That's possible too. I don't know why, but this story in particular really made me think. Fourth story. Author name, Milek. Story title, accidentally stumbled into a creepy, seemingly ghost town. Still can't find it to this day. About 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I were big into urban exploring and driving around to explore the area we live in. We had just started dating at this point and had gone on previous adventures and escapades. However, neither of us had ever had something like this happen before. On a cool autumn night, about half hour before sundown, We were taking one of our usual explorative drives around our county. We were laughing and making jokes, driving around and trying to find abandoned buildings to photograph and explore. At some point, we had taken a back road that neither of us had noticed or been down before. As we drove down the road, in an excited bewilderment of what we might discover, we came upon a very small town. And I say small, meaning a row of dilapidated-looking houses, an old convenience store, and a seemingly modern church. We started conversing, stating how neither of us had ever been to this little town or heard of it. While driving down the roadway, my boyfriend and I noticed that there were no cars, no people, no lights on, nothing indicative of people living there. As we passed the church, the roadway led out to a different road, and there was a large pond directly in front of us. We began discussing how strange it was that the town seemed empty, abandoned, almost as if it were a little ghost town. That's when we heard it. At that moment, the entire town was serenaded with extremely loud church music and church bells. My boyfriend and I both looked at each other with slight panic and confusion. We decided to get out of the car and walk around a little bit, as the area appeared deserted. The music continued, which I can only assume was coming from the church, but it filled the town with such an eerie ambience. I walked towards the church and saw that there was a sign near the entrance. Ironically and creepily enough, the sign read, Pleasant Valley Church. At that moment, I got an unsettling feeling. As my boyfriend continued to walk around and look at the houses with a great amount of skepticism, I called out to him, "Hey, I think we probably should go." My boyfriend jogged over and agreed. "This is really weird. Let's get the fuck out of here." We both got back into the car and drove away from this strange, otherworldly town in silence. After a few moments, my boyfriend broke the silence. "Well, that was weird." I nodded and thought about how odd that experience had been. Maybe we should see if we can find this place again. Perhaps it's just a weird little town and no one was home. Who knows? About a week or so later, my boyfriend and I went out to one of our adventures and drove around. We both decided to try and find the ghost town again. I can't tell you how many countless hours we spent driving around our county for months, tirelessly trying to find this place. But we never did. And we still never have. Neither of us know or really can explain what exactly happened that evening, but it always chills me to recount the story, knowing that this little town at the edge of the woods seemed to just disappear. Personal thoughts. I think eerie is a very apt description for this, primarily because you can't find the town anymore. I wonder, have you tried using Google Maps? Most phones now will automatically track your position. I know with Google Android they've been doing this for a while, perhaps even the 3 years ago where this happened. If you know where you were exactly, even just the roads you were traveling, maybe you can try to use a satellite imaging to pinpoint where the town is. But then maybe it really did just disappear. Or was it ever really there to begin with? Was it an imprint or something? I don't know. Fifth story. Author name: Sick McNasty. Story title: I Met My Future Self? Maybe. Backstory. This is important for later. For about 9 months or so, I was planning to move to California last September. Plans fell through due to financial reasons, and other opportunities had come my way. This happened to me while I was at work, closing, so I was completely alone. A customer came in. He was maybe in his early 60s, I'm 21. I wouldn't say he looked like me, but he was definitely dressed similar to me. And that's how I'd expect myself to dress at that age. Kinda old man surly, SoCal vibes. But this guy says, "Man, I need some caffeine. I know it's late, but I've been consuming that stuff daily since I was a little kid." I told him, "Me too. Since I was about 8, I started drinking coffee, which is a fact about me." This guy continues to talk about how he loves the music I was playing in the store, etc. Then, out of the blue, this guy says, "Why do you choose not to move to California?" I didn't mention California to this man at all. I've never met this man. I don't know who he is or how he knew. None of my coworkers, or really anyone besides my family, knew about my plans for California. I served him his drink, and as we walked out, he said, "You'll go. Maybe not now, but you'll love that place." Again, I never spoke about California to him, but he knew I was planning to move there, and he knew I loved the place. He walked out, and I have not seen him since. I asked my parents and anyone who knew about my plans if they had told anyone, more specifically an older man. They all said no, per my request to keep it on the down low. To this day, I'm still in awe. Personal thoughts. That is quite strange, isn't it? I guess it's possible that he just got a vibe from you. Maybe you embody California. I don't know. The whole hipster skater thing? Maybe. Could just be a guess, but very odd indeed. Especially that he also looked like you, maybe a bit, and dressed like you. Maybe it actually was you. Although if it was, why didn't he give you more advice? Would that be forbidden in the time travel rules? Maybe. Sixth story. My local supermarket changed for a day. Hello, good people of Glitch in the Matrix. I have a wee glitch that I want to share. Around November of last year, I went to my regular supermarket to get some heavy goods, so I went to grab a trolley. The trolleys at this supermarket are the only ones in town to need a 1-pound coin or token to use, so I had my coin ready. As I went up to the trolleys, I was mildly surprised to see all new trolleys and no coin needed. I asked the staff member by the trolleys when the coin deposit was taken away. She replied, "They've never needed coins." Okay, so she's mistaken, I thought. I go inside and I'm instantly confused again, as all the aisles have changed. Everything is in a different place. The regular staff are doing different jobs. Example, the kiosk lady with red hair was collecting trolleys. The whole shop feels weird. When I leave, I ask my partner, who was waiting in the car, to just look at the trolleys, and she remarked they were all brand new, so I have a witness. The next day we go again, and all the trolleys are back to the battered, old coin deposit type, and the shop has returned to normal. Now what the hell parallel universe did I slip into? If I didn't have a witness, I would think I was going mad. Not madly exciting, but weird as hell. Thank you for your time. Second experience. Miraculously survived a car accident. I had a very strong car accident when I was 18. The car was fully destroyed. It ended up between 2 trees, unrecognizable at all. The 3 of us went out of it without a single scratch. I remember the police officers telling us how lucky we were, explaining that they see a lot of car accidents, and cars don't need to end up with that level of destruction in order for all the passengers to die. They told us that it was a miracle that neither of us had been injured at all. I vividly remember, even in slow motion, how before crashing after losing control of the car, I was approaching to a tree. I remember how it was getting bigger and bigger in my pilot window. While I was getting closer, there was a moment where it covered all the left window. I was supposed to crash against that tree with the left side of the car, 1 instant before the crash, after the last image of the tree covering all the window, I lost consciousness for what felt like less than a second. Then, there I was between 2 trees, but pressed by the front and the back of the car. I think something really strange happened in that instant, and that maybe someone or something paused the accident for a second and changed the position of the crash so that we didn't die. That does sound like he has a guardian angel, doesn't it? Sometimes, though, memories can be, how to say? Well, memories are curious because they're not exactly historical recreations. When you access a memory in your mind, your brain is actually recreating it, in a sense. And sometimes it leaves a piece out or arranges it differently. So perhaps to protect the individual, it reassembles it in a way that might not make sense, but would scare the person less. I don't know. But if it's not that, he really must have someone looking after him. 7th story. Author name: Ensley Gorth. Story title: I'm in the UK, and my car radio picked up a station out of Nevada. Time didn't feel right, and I still have the chills right now. This was just a few hours ago. I can't stop thinking about it. The whole experience was extremely strange. My 2-year-old daughter was meant to be having her weekly custody night with her dad last night. Taking kids between parents' houses is currently permitted under the virus's restrictions. Usually, she's fine with him, but he rang me at 1:30 a.m. saying that she was coming down with something and was very anxious and screaming at me. He stated he'd given her medication and done everything he could think of to calm her, but she just wanted me. It was clear he wasn't doing well, so I asked if he wanted me to come over and get her, and he said yes. He lives 10 miles away, so I wasn't very happy about having to go, but of course my daughter needed me, so I had a quick coffee and hopped in the car. A good portion of the route is pretty much on the highway, and I only remember seeing 2 cars on there as I got onto it. I presumed key workers on a night shift. I usually get irritated by music in the car, but it was so eerie, and I also wanted to keep myself awake, so I just put on a generic top 40 station that was playing ads. As I got to my junction, I remember suddenly jolting and having this weird feeling of, wait, I'm here already? I remembered going into the motorway and putting the radio on, and then suddenly it was time to pull off. Usually I'd have been on the motorway for 10 minutes. You could just say that because nothing significant happened, and I was tired. My brain just saw no reason to log the journey. But around halfway between my 2 junctions, there's a huge sewage plant right next to the motorway, and you can always smell it very strongly, even if the windows are up. Usually on this route, I know when I'm approaching it and hold my breath. Seemingly last night, though, I just went past it without acknowledging it. Get to my ex's soon after, and I pick up my daughter. I have coffee in this kitchen while he gets her stuff ready because I'm worried and too tired to drive safely, and I'm regretting my decision to come and get her. My daughter is a lot calmer by the time I get there, but still very clingy towards me. We set off again. My daughter quickly fell asleep in the back, and I had the radio on a low sound, but still intelligible. As I pulled onto the motorway again, the radio started going glitchy and static. I just kinda left it as it was, expecting it to pick up again soon. Suddenly it starts blaring Nirvana, and weirdly loudly as well. Obviously a top 40 station wouldn't be playing Nirvana in 2020, so I assumed it was just interference and a rock station had took over. Bit weird, but it happens. I kept playing it and didn't give it too much thought, until the song ends and suddenly starts telling me the latest news headlines in Reno, Nevada. Some random American city I've never heard of. It definitely wasn't a UK-based station for Americans in the UK, or something like that. It was telling me local news, and the clearly American presenter then started on a tangent about some event that had been cancelled in the city due to the virus, and how disappointed his wife and kids were about it. I was dumbfounded and just carried on listening, wondering how the hell this was possible, and when it was going to cut out. Eventually it did, just as I was about to pull off the motorway again. It must have been on at least 5 minutes. After it cut out, the local top 40 came back pretty instantly. I got home a few hours ago, and my daughter has thankfully slept well. But I haven't. I read online radio stations can travel further at night and bounce off the atmosphere. But Nevada? Why would I be hearing that in Stockport, England? Perhaps if it was a station on the US East Coast, it might have made a slight bit more sense. That way it would have been able to jump across the Atlantic, and not the entire continental US as well. That, along with the weird time-lapse, has definitely given me the feeling that the atmosphere was not right on that motorway. I can't stop thinking about it. Edit. The pop station was called Capital FM Manchester, on 102.0 FM. I don't know the name of the US station. It was never said. I don't know how radio works, so I can't say whether that station also needed to be on 102 FM for me to pick it up. I assume so. Personal thoughts. This is a novel type glitch. It almost gives me the impression that some kind of alien activity is involved. That's often what happens when you have time lapses, especially while driving. A lot of people report that. They're missing time, and then later on they find abnormalities on their bodies, markings or bruises that they didn't have before. And in this case, with the radio playing a station that was thousands of miles away across the Atlantic Ocean, well, what could cause that? You'd have to have a source that was amplifying a signal so far away. Perhaps aliens could do that, although why? I doubt it would be intentional, perhaps some kind of unintended consequence of their technology. But this would definitely keep me up at night too. 8th story. First story. Author name: My Innocent Bystander. Story title: A ring I lost in a pool appeared a few days later right next to me. Last summer, a friend had invited me to go to the pool with him. The year before, my grandma, who is sadly no longer with us, gave me a cladag ring and told me that when she was younger, she had one just like it, and she wore it all the time until it broke. She told me she'd hoped I'd do the same and think about her. I wear this ring all the time and often fidget with it unconsciously. So I went to the pool with my friend, and we were just having fun, right? And I definitely remember having the ring as we, 1, left the house to go to the pool, and 2, fidgeting with the ring while we were there. A little while before we left, I realized that the ring was missing, and that I must have dropped it while diving, or the water made it slip off or something, which doesn't happen often, except in the cold, and it was a pretty hot summer day. We looked all over for that ring. Even the lifeguards dove in and looked for us. The pool is a pretty dang small pool, and there's not much around it, so there weren't a lot of places to look. We didn't find it, so the people said that they'd give us a call if they found it, and we would come pick it up. But a few days later, I woke up and, without even thinking, I reached behind me, and underneath my pillow was the ring. I know my parents had nothing to do with it, because they wouldn't put it in my bed, and I know I had it with me at the pool, and it definitely couldn't have been any other ring. So what happened? Personal thoughts. You know, something like this has happened to me, but it's with a strange item. It was with a yo-yo. You know those things that you have, there's a string attached to your finger and you just throw it down and it spins on its own axis inside. It's fun little toys. But I had one that was red. I was at a friend's birthday party. We were just having fun. I was playing with it. I set it on the counter And then when I went back for it later after we had cake, it was gone. I just figured one of the kids, took it. I don't remember. How old were we? Maybe 12 or something? Anyways, I just figured, so some kid took it. Probably forgot to put it back, I don't know. But then, probably a week after, I was at school, and it was in my locker. Now you could say maybe a kid at the birthday party saw me, knew it belonged to me, and then somehow had my locker code too, and just put it back and never told me? It's very strange. It's not the glitchiest thing that ever happened, but it is very odd. It makes you question things, even if it's a small event. 9th story. Author name: Isolani. Story title: I didn't exist for a couple of hours. So, mobile alert. This happened 2 days ago. I was at my home because of quarantine, and according to me, I was sleeping. When I woke up, my mom was looking at me, having a very shocked and worried expression, and tears in her eyes. She asked me where the hell I was, and I said that I was sleeping right here in my bed. She didn't believe me, and said she checked and I wasn't there. So apparently, my family woke up in the morning, and I didn't come for breakfast. My dad came into my room and just saw the blanket and pillow. I do sleep with a blanket on my face. Then my mom came to wake me and took the blanket off. No one was there. Then she panicked and told my dad. They searched the entire house and tried calling me, but nothing worked. Then they asked the neighbors if they had seen me leaving, but the neighbors couldn't help as well. My mom was so afraid at that point, and they called the police, and that's when my dad went to file the report, and I woke up. We called my dad and told him I was back, and he wanted an explanation, and I couldn't give one. I said I was just sleeping, and then I woke up, and this whole thing had happened. I wanted to make it clear that I do sleep with a blanket covering my entire body, and my mom did make it clear that she took the blanket off, and no one was there. We're all very shaken right now. Personal thoughts. Now this has never happened to me before. I was always out exploring as a kid on my bike, just walking with friends, in forests, everything. But I never went missing, and I would always come home at a proper hour, you could say, before the lamppost would go out. Anyways, I wonder what could have happened here. If her mom did remove the covers, as she's saying, and this person wasn't even sleeping in her bed, I have no idea what would cause that. Yeah, I have no explanation. Very strange. 10th story. Author name: Horinas69. Story title: Something is wrong with my girlfriend. Me, male 26, and my girlfriend, female 25, have been living together in an apartment for 2.5 years. Everything has been normal until quarantine started, around 4 weeks ago, when I started noticing some odd things. For instance, for the last 3 weeks or so, my girlfriend has been putting sugar in her morning coffee, while throughout our entire relationship, she's always been very much against it. It may seem like a small detail, but she's always been complaining about how I don't know what real coffee is since I put quite a lot of sugar in it. On the first day that I saw her drinking coffee with sugar, I asked her why she would do that, and she looked at me weirded out and said something like, "What are you talking about? I've always put sugar in my coffee." I felt a bit confused for a moment, but then we started talking about some other things, so I didn't think any more about it until the morning after, when she did the exact same thing, and had once again the exact same reaction. Fast forward a few days, and another odd thing happened. We were having sex, and she suddenly suggested a sex pose that we'd already tried once, but it had gone wrong and it hurt her a lot, so we had simply decided not to try it anymore. Naturally, I was very surprised with her suggestion, and reminded her about the time when it went wrong, and she just completely dismissed it, saying that I probably mixed her up with some ex-girlfriend or that I'm just tripping. We then did the pose and we actually enjoyed it. Today, the weirdest thing happened, which is the reason I'm writing this post. In the afternoon, I was working at home. I'm employed as a PhD student at the computer science department of a university. When my girlfriend asked me what's up with a guy who I've never heard of before, I asked her who she's referring to, and she said, "Well, it's that colleague of yours who you always talk about. The one from the company where you're employed at." I froze and asked her to repeat, and she said the exact same thing all over again. Then I told her that I don't work at any company, nor have I ever worked at any company since I started my PhD straight after my master's degree. At this point, she also completely froze, and we were just staring at each other, completely confused and shocked for a few moments. She then asked me what the hell is going on, and I reminded her about the coffee thing and about the sex pose, and that I don't know anymore what's going on. At this point, she started crying too, and asked what's wrong with us. Nor she, nor me, nor anyone in both families have ever had any mental problems in the past. We don't know what to do about this. Can anyone explain what's wrong with us? Edit. We talked to the landlord about this problem, and she'll help us getting a detector and checking the carbon monoxide level in the apartment. Also, even though we do regular medical checkups, we will have another one soon. Hopefully it will not take too long due to the virus. We'll probably also go see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. Thanks again for all your help. Personal thoughts. See, that's what I was thinking too. I know that oxygen deprivation can cause hallucinations or just make you think of things that aren't true or distorting reality and especially memories. Although I'm not sure. If there was a carbon monoxide leak in their apartment, it would have to be very small for it to affect them but not kill them. I don't know. I guess it's not impossible. But it is something that's affecting both of them. Of course, there's always a theory that they're just transported to a different universe, one of them to the other. And as far as I know, from all the glitch in the Matrix stories I've read, well, that's a pretty common occurrence, at least on this side of things. Perhaps we will never know, but I hope for their sake that they figure it out.